Shucks. It's time for the best board game news roundup on the internet. If you're not subscribed and you like board game news, don't go anywhere else. Just come here and listen to me blab and ramble. Because this week we're actually going to be a little bit off of the hotness, right? The hotness is relatively static this week, but there's been a lot of other movement around with the announcements around the web. So we're going to look actually more heavily on that this week, just as a spoiler for the rest of the video. But if you're interested, let's do this. Because, you need to know what's going on, right? Right. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for dealing with me. And thanks for just watching in the first place. Hope your weekend was good. Let's just get right into it. I have nothing else for you. Okay, let's just get right into it. Wild Assent with the new cover is topping the hotness right now at the time of filming, of course. And that's because it's been getting all the clicks because their Gamefound crowdfunding campaign just ended. And again, it was sort of a little bit of a wild ride there at the end. They ended up with $809,000, but it actually went down a little bit in the last 48, 60 hours, and before going back up, because they were sitting just over 800,000, I think about at the 48 or even the 24-hour mark. And so not having that big push was a little bit surprising. Now, granted, I think the original only did like 100,000 or 200,000 or something like that I touched on previously. So this is a huge, massive upgrade. And the pledges for this in terms of the price point, again, was a huge, massive upgrade if you were getting everything. And $500, even $120 just for the entry point. Another thing that people were commenting on that I was even watching in one of the Board Game Co. Quackalope videos was they thought apparently that this was going to be standalone too, and it's not. The fact that you need the base game to be able to do this, I think, was a bit of a surprise to everyone. So obviously it didn't hurt it in terms of, total funding, but I guess the question would have been, would you have seen more entry if it was standalone? And how does this compare? Because the inevitable comparisons are going to be out there to its other product, Lazy Square's other brother product, Storm Sunder, which is coming out between now and Lavon Rising. So that is going to be the main comparison. I am also now going to do, because I brainstormed it over the weekend, a video comparing, Lavon Rising / just Wild Assent Core, KDM, as well as something like maybe Arena the Contest, because it's sort of having a similar vibe with the PvP, but also the PvE. The stretch goals for this campaign were what they were. There were stretch goals, so there were also daily unlock. A lot of big crossovers with other games. As you can see here, they have a little bit of everything with Storm Sunder to Midara to Chronicles of Drunagor. So a little bit of appeal from all of those sides as well. And they even added, I believe, 2 extra expansions on top of just the announced stuff to begin with. So those pledges at the top were expensive. There was a lot of money going into that. And you really have to like something to go in for that much. And that actually puts it more close and akin to Storm Sunder in terms of the pricing. Now, again, Storm Sunder all in is obviously still way more, but it's up there higher than I thought it was going to be total for everything. So I'll put that out there. But that's why it's on the hotness. Expect to see some late backing. And I will also have my video. Hopefully, I might do a separate video for that too about, and because I wasn't able to get my video out before the campaign ended, maybe I'll do it as a late backing, what you should know if you're interested, or what you just should be aware of in terms of breaking down pledges. So I'm probably going to do something more like that as in the future as well. Next up on the hotness is Dune Imperium. Now, why is Dune Imperium on the hotness? Why are we even talking about it? Well, nothing about Dune Imperium really needs to be talked about this week, except for the fact that they just announced the new expansion for Dune Imperium. So that is why Dune Imperium really needs to be mentioned. The rise of, and I'm not going to pronounce that because I didn't look it up beforehand, Ooks. Anyway, you know what it means. Now this 50th, think about that for a second, 50th ranked game on Board Game Geek on under a year is already getting an expansion. And it is bringing 3 new great houses as well as the technological advances of this new planet. They're also introducing what they're calling a new epic game mode, whatever that is going to entail. And people are loving this game across the board with the worker placement deck building combination. Now the question out there then is this going to rival the hearts and the minds for those that were preaching and proclaiming that really Endless Winter was the king of the mountain when it came to worker placement and deck building games. And that's what's going to be seen. And is this going to be an essential expansion? Something you look at like the Prelude expansion for Terraforming Mars, or the expansions for Champions of Midgard, or even Space Base, where you say, once I include this, I don't ever not include it in the future. That's going to be very interesting to tell and see. Then we go over to its other brother from another mother, Lost Ruins of Arnak, the 65th ranked game overall after less than a year, in the same market genre mechanisms of worker placement deck builders. And again, why would we be talking about this? Because within the same week as the other, they also announced their new expansion, Expedition Leaders. The ridiculous timing of that is just improbable and also impeccable at this point. Different research tracks, new artifacts, new items, but the main mechanism and thing that this expansion is bringing is, well, the aforementioned title, Expedition Leaders, to give asymmetry to players to begin with. And again, it's going to raise the same questions as the expansion for Dune Imperium. Is this essential? How essential is this? Will everybody be picking it up? And what is it going to actually do to the game? Time will tell. Next up on the hotness, though, is my personal best game of 2020, The Loop, which is being put out later this year by Pandasaurus. Why is it getting the clicks now? I have no idea, but I think people are finally recognizing it for the great cooperative adventure-style game with a unique mechanism that it is. And the interesting thing for me personally is the title change. Now, this is going to be completely missed by a lot of people, but if you look, it's not Dr. Fu, because in my copy of the game, it is Dr. Fu, as in Foo Fighters, F-O-O. Now it is Dr. Foe, Dr. Foe. So a play on words, but a completely different play on words than is in the actual game originally. Why? I don't really know. I'm curious to know, but I think you're going to see, again, this one pop up on a lot of people's lists at the end of the year by the time it really hits wide market distribution. Now, everyone's not going to like it. I believe the Dice Tower actually put out their review recently as well, though. And along with that, it was also featured on Game Night, the Board Game Geek game night of the week, whatever they do, where they do like a playthrough and then they record it and they do it that way. And so that's why it's probably also getting more clicks. It's just getting more attention in general. And frankly speaking, I will take it because hopefully we'll get more of it in the future. So one of my favorite games, The Loop, getting attention that it well deserved. What else is in the hotness? As usual, Oath is bringing in all of the clicks. Again, like usual, Shut Up and Sit Down, represent, has put out their review of Oath, and I think that is why it has been more of a mainstay this week, but everybody from under the sun, left to right, is putting out their thoughts, comments, suggestions, and just plays of everything under the sun Oath. And so that's why you're going to see it, and there's just going to be more probably the rest of 2021. Obviously, Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition is still there between the little kerfuffle that happened with the Kickstarter and the fact that, again, it's getting in more backers' hands and it's just being more widely distributed in Target. That's why you're seeing it on the hotness still. And then we run into my personal bread and butter of the Kickstarter section of the hotness. And the most recent hot launch last week was Distilled, the spirited strategy game, a Euro mechanism style where you are incorporating truly thematic installations of whiskey making when you are pressing your luck in a little bit of manner of your deck, trying to get more whiskey so you can sell the most in the end. It's funding quite well on Kickstarter right now, so check it out if you're interested. Also, the most recent of the hyped games as well, and one with some of the best art I have seen in 2021, Soul Raiders, the campaign story heavy, narrative driven, location manipulating, independent but also cooperative group play style of game. And Distilled, raising a lot of money. Soul Raiders, already over 6 figures as well. Soul Raiders, a little bit of a mixed bag right now because we're going to kind of see, with this heavy narrative driven push that we have seen lately in the last couple months, as well as we're going to see in the next coming months, how does that translate into the cash? We'll see, because they talk about the branching story points and branching locations, allowing you to get to the same endpoint in completely different manners and varied replayability. But are people going to buy into it from that standpoint, especially when the price point is a little bit higher than I think some of us were expecting? But that is Soul Raiders and why it's on the hotness. I ran across this one, so I'm just going to highlight it really quick. If you're familiar with Street Fighter the Miniatures game, the Jasco Angry Joe compilation, if you will, the next in the line of that system was, and still is, Mortal Kombat. But apparently there have been some IP delays, and they have also now announced that they are going to do a remake, a redo, a new version. I'm not sure if it's just a complete reboot, but it is going to be a new Mega Man style of game with miniatures. And we'll see if it's any more successful than the often malaligned first version of it from Jasco Games as well. But that is what to expect in this line, instead of seeing Mortal Kombat on your Kickstarter screen before the end of 2021. Next up, for all you Europeans who are watching this, I'm going to give a shout out to you guys, because this is the Masters of the Universe from Archon Studios Fields of Eternia game. And the reason I'm mentioning it really briefly is, if you're following these, the really interesting thing about Gamefound is you can follow before the campaign, you can follow during the campaign. You do not have to be a backer like you do with Kickstarter to get the updates. And so if you're following right now, they announced the early bird mini. So if you are backing within, I believe, the first 48 hours, you are getting this bonus miniature for free. Available as an add-on later in the campaign. But if you are a fan of Master of Eternia, it's probably already on your watch list. But if there's any more incentive, there you go. Next up is a little bit of a personal touch here, a personal shout out from one of my favorite animes and mangas. Now, this is the Boruto Next Generations of Naruto, and they are doing another board game based on this IP. From now, this is an interesting twist here from Blacklist Games, and you may know them from something like Street Masters. Now, what you're going to be doing in this game is you are going to be taking one ninja from a generation, the new generation, and you are taking one ninja from the previous generation, the Naruto generation, if you're familiar with the IP, and you are combining those cards to form a deck. And you have a couple allies you can choose from each game, and you are fighting villains with said deck. It's a combination of something like 5 and 2 or 5 and 3 of the new versus the old. So if that's of interest to you, be on the lookout. I'm trying to get as much information as I can because I love a really good, and I'm not sure that this is necessarily going to be it, but a really, really good use of this IP. I have yet to see it, and hopefully at some point in the future, somebody can really do this. So maybe this is a step towards that direction, and that's from Blacklist Games. Why is Chris going to a page now that has no image available? Why am I even bothering to talk about exit games? If you know anything about this channel, I'm not a huge exit game fan. Well, for all you non-exit people, but all of you exit people as well, or escape room people, this one should be of a really interesting blend, because even though I don't read German here, if you read the captions, this is a Lord of the Rings escape exit style game. And so that just has to make you excited a little bit if you're going to be doing some escaping from somewhere on Middle-earth. There's not a whole lot of details on the page, as you can see, but you're solving puzzles, you're fighting Nazgul and orcs, and you just kind of get to see where things go. So if you want to see what else is in store for the latest Tolkien iteration in the board game tabletop scene, keep your eyes on this one as well. Now, you may have missed this in all of the other excitement with the Dragon expansion for CATAN, but CATAN is actually putting out a 3D logic puzzle in September. And this is going to be a built-in storage with built-in puzzle pieces, resources, and instructions as you're just trying to connect mines, farms, and lumber camps to settlements around the island. And it's going to be mainly a solo game, but, you know, it's going to be a different twist on things that we've seen before from CATAN. So if that's of interest to you, keep your eyes open when it retails in September. Now I'm going to skip over again back to Gamefound here, because Gamefound, if you were paying attention to the Monster Hunter World, they announced it, but they all of a sudden added in 2 more additional monsters, new for the Pledge Manager. And this is the other interesting part that I feel like people are overlooking, and I have not seen mentioned elsewhere, that are not part of that all-in massive pledge that were there to begin with. And they talk about it a little bit here, and they talk about, oh, we unlocked it here and here. So we're going to give you, though, different miniatures that go along with them. An already colored set of PVC miniatures. So again, you know, FOMO, cool, a little bit of both. I don't know. How do you feel about stuff like that, especially post-campaign? Now, granted, I hope that that's not the barrier to someone backing or not backing. It shouldn't be, but it's just interesting to see that they came out with this, and I just wonder why. Timing-wise, why from this standpoint, who knows? But, again, it's interesting to note, and we'll see if other campaigns do it in the future, if they actually get some traction with this. Now, if you're familiar with Onitama, they just recently announced from Arcane Wonders that there is going to be a third expansion called Light and Shadows. Now, there's not a whole lot of information even on Board Game Geek yet, but these pictures were sent out to an email to subscribers to Arcane Wonders, and so you can check it out, not even on their website yet. So we'll see what it says, but it's going to be supposedly around the Gen Con-ish time for limited release, at least, if not full release. So if you're interested, check it out. From Horrible Guild now, this is the standalone sequel to King's Dilemma. This is Queen's Dilemma, where they say instead of just the court, now you are going to be focused on a big map of the kingdom as a whole and taking control of regions and manipulating in that way. Will it be as good as its predecessor? Will it be as well thought of? Time will tell. There is no tentative release date yet, but it has a lot of people already salivating with the potential of what could be with this new game. Now, if you have a copy of The War of the Ring and you are a big proponent of it and you can actually get it played, Ares Games has just announced a twist in a mini expansion which takes the result of the Battle of the Five Armies and assumes that the Dark Forces won instead, and then plays off of it in the adaptation of the War of the Ring. And so that is going to be out sometime later this year, and obviously it's going to require the base game to play in the first place. So if that's of interest to you, check it out when it is finally released. Last but not least, we're probably having the biggest news at the very end of this video, and that is a combination of two very big IPs from two very different universes. And if you did not hear me shout this from the rooftops several times this year, as well as the end of last year, this is video game meets board game tabletop in the most extreme version possible. Pandemic is getting a World of Warcraft version. Now, there's not a whole lot of other details here, except for that it's going to be based on the Wrath of the Lich King. And so that's all we really know at this point. But as a Pandemic harder co-op person, as well as someone who is at least somewhat familiar with World of Warcraft mythos, I think the combination is great. I'm super excited to see what they can do. And show me something different, Pandemic. Don't give me just a reskin. Make this incredibly unique, just like you have done with the other iterations of the yearly Pandemic releases in the past. Give me something better, though, than all of the others. And there are some good standout ones. People think highly of Fall of Rome. People think highly of the Cthulhu one. I think personally the best one is still Pandemic Iberia, but surpass your predecessors. And that's what I want to see out of this. So I'm going to be watching this one very closely, as well as more news eventually trickles out. There is no release date yet, but man, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. AwShucks is done, representing one of the biggest board game channels on the nets. I'd like to meet those guys sometime. Anyway, as always though, thanks for watching. Thanks for clicking. Hopefully, this was a quick synopsis of all of the news and notables around the interwebs for the last 2 weeks or so. If you're interested, tune into my other stuff, Kickstarter roundups on a weekly basis, except for this week because I'm on vacation. But there still will be an upcoming for the following week on Saturday, and a few other smatterings of things thrown out this week as well. So there you go. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know what I can do better. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what's going to get you to view more of my videos in general. Let's get those numbers up, people. Those are some rookie numbers. Gotta pump them up. Anyway, so thank you. Stay classy. Have a great week.